As I stepped out of the car and breathed in the fresh scent of pine trees and clean mountain air, a quiet sense of anticipation settled over me. The cabin stood there like an old friend, nestled among the tall trees, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the wooden porch. I could already see the three of them waiting for me, Tom, Jacob, and Alex, each with a welcoming grin and a kind of warmth that tugged at my heart. It had been too long since we'd all been together like this, and something about the familiarity mixed with the newness of seeing them as adults made my pulse quicken. This morning, when I'd kissed my husband goodbye, he'd looked at me with that easy trust he always had, telling me to relax and enjoy the week. His faith in me was almost comforting. He'd always been the type to never question, always so sure of us and of me. And yet, as I looked at my three stepsons standing there, that sense of calm from earlier seemed to slip away. It struck me how different they were from the boys I'd watched grow up. Now they were men, each one tall, confident, with that quiet self-assurance that only comes from age and experience. Tom, the oldest at 23, had grown to look so much like his father, with broad shoulders and a calm, steady presence that made me feel at ease. He walked down the steps, pulling me into a strong hug, his deep voice asking how the drive had been. It felt oddly grounding to be held by him like that, as though he was the one taking care of me now, not the other way around. Behind him, Jacob, who was now 22, offered his own hug, lingering just a bit longer, his touch warm and his eyes full of something I couldn't quite read. "Missed you, Mom," he murmured softly, and there was a weight in his words that made my chest feel tight. And finally, there was Alex, the youngest at 21, always the playful one, flashing me that infectious grin as he pulled me into his arms. His hug was easy and familiar, but as he held me close, I felt a subtle shift in the air, a sensation I couldn't quite name. Once inside, they wouldn't let me do a thing. Tom, Jacob, and Alex had taken care of everything. My suitcase was already in the guest room, the table was set, and they'd even found a bouquet of wildflowers to place on. It was thoughtful in a way that caught me off guard, the kind of thing I hadn't expected. We sat down to a simple lunch they'd prepared, a crisp salad, fresh bread, and a bottle of my favorite wine. As we shared the meal, I couldn't help but notice how each of them had grown in his own way. Tom had an easy confidence now, his laughter rich and deep as he recounted stories from his work. Jacob seemed more introspective, his gaze steady and soft, offering me gentle smiles every time he passed me something from the table. And Alex, full of energy as always, seemed to lean in just a little too close as he spoke, his bright eyes twinkling with that mischievous spark he'd always had. As the meal wound down, we moved out onto the porch, the four of us sitting together as the day faded into evening. Tom and Jacob sat on either side of me, their legs brushing mine as we settled into the old wooden chairs. Alex leaned against the railing, his gaze flitting between us, watching with a quiet intensity that felt new. It was a perfect evening, soft and warm, with the sounds of birds in the trees and a breeze rustling the leaves. I felt a comfort that only came with familiarity, but there was also a subtle tension hanging in the air, something I could feel lingering just beneath the surface. Maybe it was just that they'd grown up so fast, or maybe it was the way they looked at me now, with a depth that made my stomach twist ever so slightly. But as we sat there, talking and laughing as the sky darkened, I couldn't shake the feeling that this week was going to be different. The next morning, I woke to soft light filtering through the cabin windows, the golden rays painting the walls in warm hues. The fresh scent of pine wafted through the air, a fragrant reminder of why I cherished this place. Outside, I could hear the gentle chirping of birds, their melodies weaving through the stillness of the morning. I got out of bed and pulled on my hiking boots, tying my hair back in a loose ponytail. "Hey, Mom, we're thinking of hitting the trail this morning. Want to join?" Tom called out from the kitchen, his voice ringing with excitement. "Of course, just give me a minute," I replied, feeling a rush of anticipation. When I stepped into the kitchen, I found my three stepsons bustling around, each embodying a slice of their father. Tom stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with an easy confidence. Jacob was at the table, setting it with a casual grace, his steady gaze making me feel at home. Alex was darting between them, full of energy, trying to sneak bites of the food before it made it to the plates. They had prepared a simple breakfast: fluffy pancakes, crispy bacon, and freshly squeezed orange juice. As I took in the scene, a swell of affection filled my heart. Watching them work together, sharing playful banter, reminded me of the days when they were younger and full of laughter. After breakfast, we grabbed our gear and set out. The path wound through towering trees, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle breeze. Tom led the way with purpose, his strides long and sure. Jacob walked beside me, his easy smile relaxing my nerves, and Alex bounced on his heels behind us, cracking jokes that made me chuckle. As we hiked, the trail became steeper, and I could feel the cool mountain air invigorating my senses. When we finally reached a clearing, the view opened up before us, a breathtaking panorama of rolling hills and valleys bathed in sunlight. I paused to take it all in, feeling the warmth of their eyes on me. "Isn't it beautiful?" I said, glancing back at them. "It is, but it's nothing compared to how beautiful you are," Jacob said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I felt my cheeks heat up at the unexpected compliment. "Thanks, Jacob." "You're too sweet," I laughed, brushing it off, but the sincerity in his tone sent a flutter through me. Tom approached, taking my arm to help me navigate over a particularly tricky section of the trail. "Careful there, Mom," he said, his grip firm yet gentle. When our eyes met, a jolt of electricity surged between us, causing my heart to race. I couldn't help but feel a mix of warmth and uncertainty at the intensity of his gaze. As we continued our hike, the air thickened with earthy scents, and the sounds of laughter echoed around us. Alex, always the instigator, suggested we race to a massive rock formation up ahead, declaring, "Last one there has to do the dishes tonight." Without waiting for a response, he took off, his laughter ringing out like a challenge, with Jacob close behind. "Come on, Mom," Tom urged, and before I could think, I found myself sprinting after them, the thrill of competition igniting something inside me. The ground felt solid beneath my feet, and for a moment I felt as though I were flying. When we reached the rock formation, I was breathless, my heart pounding not just from exertion, but from the exhilaration of being surrounded by them. As we caught our breath, I noticed Jacob's eyes lingering on me, an intensity in his expression that made my stomach twist. "You know, Mom," he said, "you've really got a youthful spirit. It's inspiring." "Thanks, Jacob. You boys keep me young," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. But his gaze was heavy with something more, a weight I didn't quite understand. As we made our way back to the cabin, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over everything. The air was charged with unspoken feelings, a tension that hung between us like an invisible thread, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this week was destined to be different. 3. Day 3. The lake. The third morning welcomed me with sunlight streaming through the cabin windows, casting a warm glow that filled my heart with excitement. I pulled on my favorite sundress, ready for the day ahead. In the kitchen, my 3 stepsons were already bustling around, laughter mingling with the scent of fresh coffee. Tom was expertly flipping pancakes, while Jacob set the table, his eyes sparkling with playful mischief, and Alex darted between them, trying to snatch bites before they hit our plates. Their energy was contagious, and I couldn't help but smile. After breakfast, we drove to the lake, anticipation buzzing in the air. The moment we arrived, the shimmering water stretched before us, inviting and beautiful. I felt a thrill of adventure as Alex dashed into the lake, challenging everyone to join him. Without hesitation, I dove in, the cool water refreshing and exhilarating. The laughter and splashes were infectious, and soon Tom and Jacob were in the water with us, our playful competition reminding me of simpler times. Once we were out, I lay on a blanket, soaking up the sun, while the boys continued their playful antics. I caught Jacob watching me, his expression thoughtful. "You look beautiful today, Mom," he said softly, and my cheeks flushed at his words. Tom joined us on the blanket, our arms brushing together. "You know, it's hard to believe how grown up you've become," he teased lightly, but his gaze held something deeper, making my heart race. After a while, we decided to explore. Alex playfully nudged me, trying to push me into the water, but Jacob came up behind me, whispering, "Let's race to that rock." We took off, laughter echoing around us as we sprinted, and when we reached the rock, I felt breathless. Not just from the run, but from the thrill of their company. As the sun began to set, we settled back on the blanket. Tom leaned back, his arm casually draped behind me. "We should do this more often." "Just us," he suggested, and I felt the weight of his words. Jacob moved closer, his shoulder brushing against mine. "It's nice to see you relaxed, Mom. You deserve it." His voice was low, his gaze intense, and I felt a twist in my stomach. Then, Alex leaned in, his tone serious. "You're not just our mom. You're beautiful, and we've all noticed." I felt my breath hitch at his admission, the atmosphere thickening with unspoken emotions. I looked at them, each one holding my gaze with a mixture of admiration and desire. "You guys are sweet, but we should probably head back," I suggested, trying to diffuse the tension. But as we gathered our things, the air crackled with energy, and I felt the shift in our relationships. The trust my husband had in me loomed in the back of my mind, reminding me of my promises. As we walked back to the cabin, the atmosphere was charged, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this week was destined to change everything. 4. Day 4. Late night on the patio. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, the cabin transformed into a cozy haven. The soft glow of lanterns flickered to life on the porch, creating a warm ambiance that invited us to linger outside. I settled into one of the old wicker chairs, a glass of wine cradled in my hands, feeling the gentle breeze on my skin. The laughter of my stepsons filled the air, and I could feel the tension from the previous days hanging like a cloud above us, heavier now in the dimming light. Tom leaned against the railing, his broad shoulders outlined by the last rays of sunlight. "So what's next on our agenda for this week, Mom?" he asked, his voice teasing, yet layered with something deeper. I chuckled, feeling a flutter in my stomach at the way he looked at me, as if I were more than just their mother. "Well, I'm open to suggestions," I replied playfully, but I could sense the shift in the air. Jacob settled into the chair beside me, his knee brushing against mine. "How about we just enjoy this night? It's perfect out here," he said, his eyes glinting in the soft light. I couldn't help but notice how his gaze lingered on me, an intensity that felt almost electric. I felt warmth bloom in my cheeks. "It is nice, isn't it?" I murmured, trying to deflect the rising tension that hung between us. Alex, always the mischievous one, plopped down on the armrest of my chair, his bright eyes sparkling with mischief. "Mom, you're the life of the party. It wouldn't be the same without you here." He grinned, leaning closer, his hand casually brushing against my arm. The touch sent a shiver down my spine, igniting something within me that I hadn't quite acknowledged until now. I forced a light laugh, but my heart raced at the intimacy of the moment. "Seriously, you have this glow about you." I could feel the heat rise in my cheeks at the compliment, and I smiled, trying to play it off. "Oh, come on, you're just being nice." But I could see the sincerity in his eyes, and it made my heart race. "Not just being nice?" Jacob chimed in, his tone more serious now. "We've all noticed how beautiful you are, inside and out." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I met his gaze, and for a moment, the world around us faded. The warmth of the wine coursed through me, mingling with a rush of adrenaline at the intensity of his look. Alex, ever the bold one, grinned wickedly. "It's not just that you're our mom, you're like a total catch." He leaned in, his face inches from mine, the proximity making my breath hitch. I tried to laugh it off, but the way they looked at me sent a surge of confusion through my mind, battling against the instincts I had to protect the boundaries of our relationships. Guys, come on. I started, my voice wavering slightly as I felt Tom's hand slide down my back, his fingers lingering just above my waist. The sensation sent a thrill through me, igniting a part of me I had tried to ignore. We shouldn't... I paused, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. But Tom wasn't having it. Why not? We're just appreciating you. You deserve to be appreciated, Mom, he insisted, his voice low and persuasive. The heat of their gazes locked onto me, a palpable energy swirling in the air that made it difficult to breathe. I could feel the gravity of the moment pulling me in, a longing I hadn't expected igniting deep within. Jacob shifted closer, his knee brushing against mine again, his hand finding my wrist, fingers lingering longer than necessary. You've always been our rock, but you don't have to be just that. You can be more with us. The sincerity in his voice made my heart flutter, and I felt the rush of uncertainty and excitement mingle together. And then Alex chimed in, his tone suddenly serious. We want you to know that we see you, Mom. Not just as a mother, but as a woman. It's not weird. It's just real. Each word felt like a tiny flame, igniting something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. My heart raced, caught in a storm of confusion, thrill, and guilt as their declarations washed over me like a tide. As the air thickened with unspoken feelings, I leaned back slightly, forcing a smile to mask the internal turmoil swirling within me. You boys are sweet, really, I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. But we need to remember what we are. I could feel the weight of my husband's trust pressing down on me, a reminder of the vows I had taken. But even as I spoke, I felt an undeniable longing. This week was spiraling into something I hadn't anticipated, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could resist the magnetic pull of their admiration. The tension lingered as the night wore on, a delicate dance of feelings hovering between us, and I couldn't shake the sense that this week would change everything. 5. Day 5. The sauna. The warmth enveloped me as I stepped into the sauna, the steam curling around us like a silken shroud. The air was thick and humid, the scent of cedar wood mingling with the heat, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. I could barely see the outlines of Tom, Jacob, and Alex as they settled onto the wooden benches around me. Their presence felt... The door shut behind us, sealing in the moment, and an unsettling tension filled the small space. I glanced at them, each one more handsome than I remembered. Tom's broad shoulders were relaxed, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made my heart race. Jacob, sitting close enough for me to feel the heat radiating from him, had an expression of deep contemplation, his eyes dark and serious. Alex, always the jokester, attempted to lighten the mood with a playful quip about the sauna being the perfect place to sweat out all our secrets, but his laughter was strained, almost nervous. Mom, Jacob began, his voice low and steady, cutting through the haze of steam. We've been thinking... His words hung in the air, pregnant with meaning. I held my breath, knowing where this was headed. There had been hints all week, glances that lingered just a moment too long, compliments that felt layered with something unspoken. My heart pounded as I glanced at each of them, bracing for what would come next. It's hard to explain, Alex chimed in, his tone serious, a rare shift from his usual playful demeanor. But we've all felt something changing this week, something deeper. His gaze met mine, earnest and intense. We see you, Mom, not just as our mother, but as a woman. We want you to know how beautiful you are. There it was, the admission hanging heavy in the steamy air, an open door I hadn't expected. I felt heat rush to my cheeks, my pulse quickening at their words, the implications wrapping around me like the steam. Part of me wanted to lean into it, to revel in the attention and affection they were offering. But another part of me, the part that held onto the vows I'd made, the life I'd built with their father, screamed to step back, to pull away from this dangerous precipice. Tom leaned closer, his arm brushing against mine, his voice dropping even lower. You don't have to hide from us. We all know the love you give us, and it's okay to want something more. We want to love you, all of you, in every way we can." The sincerity in his tone made my heart twist, a mix of yearning and dread flooding my senses. I could feel the weight of their gazes upon me, each one filled with a longing that mirrored my own chaotic thoughts. But then, the memory of my husband flashed in my mind, his trusting smile, his unwavering belief in me, the life we had built together. "Guys," I started, my voice trembling, "this is all so complicated." I could see the disappointment flicker in their eyes, but I pressed on, my heart racing. "I love you all, but I'm your mother. I made promises." My breath came out in shaky gasps as I fought against the pull of their desire. Jacob's expression darkened, his vulnerability laid bare as he reached for my hand. "We don't want to replace anyone, Mom. We just want you to feel the love that's here." The weight of his words settled over me, the longing in his gaze almost unbearable. And then Tom added, "What's wrong with wanting more than just being a mother? You deserve to feel cherished, too." Their sincerity clawed at my resolve, and for a moment I felt myself teetering on the edge. Then Alex's voice broke through the fog, almost desperate. "We just want to make you happy. You're so beautiful, and we've all felt this connection. Please don't shut us out." His words hung in the steamy air, wrapped around my heart like a vice. I felt the walls I had built around myself trembling, but I couldn't let myself fall into this. "I can't," I finally managed to say, my voice firm but wavering. "I have a husband. I can't betray him. I can't betray you." The gravity of my refusal felt like a wave crashing over us, pushing against the charged air, sending ripples of disappointment through the three of them. Silence enveloped us, thick and suffocating. I could see the hurt in their eyes, the yearning morphing into something more like confusion and pain. I wanted to reach out, to ease their hurt, but I couldn't cross that line. "Mom," Tom's voice was strained, but I knew I had to stand firm. "We can't pretend we don't feel this. We can't go back to what it was." His words echoed in the heavy air, and I felt my heart shatter at the thought. "It can't just be one way," Jacob added, his frustration palpable. "I know," I whispered, tears threatening to spill over. "But I can't." I met each of their gazes, holding on to the memories we'd built, the love that had always been there, just in a different form. I felt the air crackle between us, each of their breaths heavy with unspoken longing, but the moment hung precariously, and I knew I had to be the one to pull back. As the steam swirled around us, I realized that no matter how much I wanted to lean into their affection, the bonds of family were not meant to be tangled in this way. I could see their hearts breaking, and mine ached in response, but I had to let them down gently. "We can't," I repeated, my voice breaking slightly. "Not like this. Not ever." The finality of my words settled over us, a heavy silence filling the space as the realization of what could never be hung between us.